have to do the requisite, like, waiting for everybody to join the live. So, we've just been talking as people filter in. We've just been talking about our favorite weddings that we've been to.
Yeah.
So as people join in chat, let us know the best wedding that you've ever been to, which I feel like is actually a very nice segue into the book that we're talking about.
I just thought about it. I was like, oh my gosh, weddings have tons of ugly, beautiful things.
Yes, tons of like very like cosplaying luxury. This is how we try to give opulence, and like we're doing this all for a performance. It's a lot. There's a lot of, it's a rich text.
It's a rich text.
So hi everybody who's joining. I'm Taylor. I'm here with Evelyn. Today we are talking about The Ugly History of Beautiful Things by Katy Kelleher. I hope I am pronouncing that right, because I did put this on Instagram and the author did share it. So I'm like, I feel like she's going to find this and see it. And if I said her name wrong, I apologize. But this is a Hopepunk book club. So we're talking about kind of books that make us imagine a different future, whether that's positive, negative, how we want to see things change, how we don't want to see things change. And this season has focused on consumerism, consumption, climate, all of these issues, colonialism that are intertwined. And so this is, I think, a good book to kind of wrap it up and talk about how many of the things that we enjoy are tied to, all sorts of complex histories, and kind of how we feel about that and how that history can inform our future. So, yeah, we were just sort of chatting before we went live about like how like our kind of complicated feelings about this book as we were reading it. I don't know if we want to start there. Kind of, what was your response as you were sort of reading this book, and how you felt about it?
Yeah, so first of all, I loved by the end of I don't know if it was an intro or if it was chapter 1, but I was like, oh, she's sad. I love this. I wrote down the quote. She said that she has a tendency towards darkness.
Mm-hmm.
Which made me laugh, but it's because I resonate with that.
Yeah.
And another quote was, whenever you see something beautiful, you can look closer and you'll see the familiar shadow of decay. And I was like, oh, that's what we're reading. I was like, that's what this book is. I'm locked in. I understand the tone. So like I appreciated kind of getting to know that was her point of view up front. Because it is a point of view that I have a tendency to lean towards. And sometimes I can feel like a moody teenager, but she helped me feel like, no, this is like, it's normal to kind of lament things. But I do have to say, by the end of the book, I was done lamenting. And I didn't finish the last, I didn't finish the last chapter, but I read the conclusion. Because I was like, I think I got it.
Yeah.
I got it.
It was really interesting because like there were so many points where I felt that same sort of like relating to the author, because like as she's talking about separating her eyelashes with the safety pin and like dressing up in like kind of this alternative like goth girl style, and I'm like, this is my life. But also like having this sort of like contrasting pull to like be really like melancholy, to also like wanting nice things and wanting to enjoy things and wanting beauty in your life so that you can appreciate it. I feel like I related to. I feel like both of us are kind of like that. We're like, I don't know, like as the quote you said, like if you're like sensitive to the world at all, like
right.
Like if you are truly just trying to understand what is happening around you, like how are you not going to end up kind of sad?
100%.
But like, I think one of the most honest things that she talks about in this book, it's in the chapter on silk, where she's talking about like, each one of the chapters she starts talking about, here's this beautiful thing, and like, here's my connection to it, and here's how, it's connected to child labor or to like white supremacy or to whatever. And then she gets to the silk chapter and she's like, yeah, and moths are boiled alive, and I honestly can't get myself to care.
What was so interesting about that is she mentioned something that I do, which is when I go thrifting, if I see something that's silk, even if I don't want it, I'm like, but it's silk. And so I get it because I'm like, well, it's important. Like I've been told silk is an important textile. So
yeah, it's really like interesting where she's like, okay, this is just like a trade-off that I make, and I just like it is what it is, because I feel like all of us have these. I would say in my life, like I have no container to hold information about like microplastics. Like,
yeah,
what am I to do? I am not trying to eliminate plastic from my life. Am I like ordering buckets of like little knickknacks on Temu? No, but like, am I not buying a bottle of shampoo that's plastic and trying to get a glass one? No, I don't want a glass bottle in my shower. That's gonna break and I'm gonna cut myself. Like I just like, to me, like there's just like, I try to hold so much space in my life for like understanding complex issues and trying to make decisions based on my values. I do it so much, and there's just a limit. And I think that all of us have this limit. If we don't think we do, we are lying to ourselves. And so I just really appreciated her calling out like, all right, and we're like 6 chapters into the book, and I'm sorry guys, the moths are boiled alive.
The rocks. What can I say?
Yeah. But I'm curious kind of, as you were saying, like by the end, you were kind of like, I'm done being melancholy. That's something I also felt like when it was a chapter about something I didn't care about as much, like a marble countertop is not a thing that I like. But when you're talking about perfume or makeup, which are things that I do enjoy, I'm like, don't ruin this for me. And I felt myself kind of like turning away from it and just being like, I don't want to know, because I want to still be able to enjoy this. And but like, tell me, I'm not buying the newest iPhone every year. So if you tell me about cobalt mining, I'll be like, yeah, that's bad. But yeah, tell me about my thing, then I'm going to be like, but it's a complex issue. You have to understand.
Exactly. And I think it's like that feeling of I don't want to know comes largely for me because I can't do anything about it. Like there's so much that we're not told. So like, okay, in the perfume chapter, which I found very fascinating, it's similar to, and she mentioned this a couple of times, the whole vegan side of things, of like, okay, when it comes to the perfume chapter, it was like the more natural something is, the more harmful it could be, because now a living thing is being used. But then it's like, okay, but the endocrine blockers of chemical fragrant components.
Yeah.
It was like, well, which one do you do? Do I go like the super indie fragrance, or just Bath and Body Works and call it a day? Like you kind of prioritize your own value system, because there isn't one value system.
Right.
So
it's like every time you pull on one thread, it upsets the balance of another. And I also think it's really interesting because it does point out like there's so much that we're not told. Like nobody's, doing giant social media PSA campaigns about child labor in the perfume industry. They're doing about it tech right now. But I think about this every time that there's like a boycott of a specific company. where I was just doing this because there's a podcast I work on called Ripcorp. We're working on an episode about the wing, and it was sort of like, the female co-working space, that there were these like allegations of racism and stuff, and it shut down after 2020, and everybody was talking about like, oh, this person was an abusive boss and blah blah blah, and I'm like, how many companies is that happening that they just don't have an expose about them?
Mm-hmm.
And so like we'll turn and go, oh, this isn't like, I think about there was a point in like, it was like 2017 or something, that that there was a big campaign to switch from Uber to Lyft because like Uber was doing bad stuff. Like, do we know better? Do we know that they're not also exploiting? Because I'm pretty sure they're also exploiting their labor. Like, where I'm like, it's easier for us to say like, oh, we're just going to make perfect choices, or we're not going to make bad choices. But we can't know the impacts of all of our choices ever. And so like, it's probably to work at a higher level than to just be like, well, I won't buy anything bad ever. Like,
It's also like coming to the acceptance that certain people's choices matter more and less. I think about this a lot when it comes to, I don't know if you know the whole discourse about palm oil.
Mm-hmm.
So palm oil is from palm trees, I'm guessing. And it's very prevalent in West African cooking. So like Nigerian, I think Ghanaian cuisine and stuff like that. But who lives in these trees? Orangutans.
Mm-hmm.
And so there are people who are like, palm oil is bad.
Right.
And then there are other people that it's like, no, it's only bad because people who don't live here demand palm oil.
Mm-hmm.
So like the choices of the people there aren't harming the orangutans. It's like the rest of us in the rest of the world needing to have this thing and having it now. Like our choices are what's way more than the choices of other people.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think about that a lot of like, dang, you don't get to have everything you want. Ew.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, as you were talking about the perfume, I was like, probably the answer is just not to wear perfume, but like, but I want it. Yeah. The same thing. I heard that like the same thing happened with quinoa, where it was like,
Yes.
a very like staple crop of a certain group of people, and then it got into Whole Foods, and now we're like destroying ecosystems and running up the price so that the people who have been eating it for generations can't afford it anymore. And it's like,
So it's like,
maybe
they
there's
don't stop eating quinoa.
yeah.
We do. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like the last book that we read for the book club. Obviously, you weren't there, but it was talking about like, what if we dramatically reduced our global consumption? And it was like talking about how like the best thing that you can do for the environment is to make less money, to have a lower salary, because you just have fewer opportunities then to like make bad choices.
I feel some resistance to that because I want to buy perfume, but
Yeah.
I see where that comes from.
Yeah. Well, I want to ask you before we get too far into this, kind of the central question of Hopepunk Book Club, which is like, we're sitting here talking about problems from history in the present, but what does this book make you believe about the future?
This one was hard because I didn't want to feel very doom and gloom, but it's feeling kind of doom and gloomy. So what I landed on was, okay, I gotta find it in my I have it on Kindle, so I have to find my little note, which I got this off Facebook Marketplace.
Here we go. Secondhand. This is what I tell myself. I mean, obviously you can probably all consume secondhand, but for the most part, if you're reusing, you can get around a lot of those loopholes.
Okay, let me find it. My notes. Okay. And what did I say? I said page 181. Let's find it.
Like so deeply organized. I'm just like dog-eared pages, like random stuff scribbled in there.
Okay, so this quote made me think of a song. And then all those two things together are kind of what I think about the future when it comes to this book. So on page 181, it says, in this world, we've devised miraculous tools to observe galaxies billions of light years away, but we somehow can't manage to see ourselves clearly. So I was like, oh, and it made me think of this song. Let me find it. I had it open.
Experience here. I like it.
Okay, so the song is called Slow Coming by Benjamin Booker. And the lyrics say, even though computers are taking up my time, even though there's satellites roaming in space, even though my phone predicts the weather, we still can't help you. The future is slow coming. And that's what I think. I think the future is slow coming. I won't say the future is going to be bad or that it's doom and gloom, but I think the future that we want is just going to take a hot ass minute to arrive. And so that helps me feel a little bit more hopeful because the future is coming whether or not we're there and whether or not we make changes, but it is going to be slow. It's going to be slow.
Yeah. I think that that's really like apart from this book, because this book does not address like the AI situation at all, but it makes me think of that because like think about how many people were like, this is the new wave, this is the new thing. How many companies are pouring billions of dollars into this? And some people are adopting it and stuff, but like for the most part, there's a pretty big resistance of like, we don't want this. Like you are trying to sell us something that is not meeting a need that we have. And no amount of like tech CEOs and billions of dollars of investors, same thing happened with crypto, where it's like, you can tell us this is the wave of the future and that it's going to happen, then it's inevitable. God, how many people have said that that is inevitable? And it's just like, that's just not how it works. You just don't get to say this is what it is and like it's happening whether you like it or not. Like the way that it all unfolds is unpredictable to us in its direction and its pace. So like
yeah, and it made me think about like the concept of modernization and how come modern doesn't just mean present, like presently happening? It has to mean technologically optimized, I guess.
yeah.
Because what if the future was modernized, meaning sustainable? Then isn't that just like an ancient practice? So then it's like time is a circle.
And like, yeah, the time is a circle really, I feel like shows up in this book so much because of how many, current practices, you know, the way that we do our makeup, the way that we like build our houses, buying engagement rings and what they're made of and all this stuff. Like that's just so, we're still doing things in these very old-fashioned ways. Like we feel like we've progressed so far from generations ago, but like if you look at the histories of how these things came about, like we're still doing some of the same stuff and we can put it in a different package, but like I don't know, just I think it's like, you know, the future is slow coming and we're also just like we can't fool ourselves that we're not tied to our past.
Yeah.
But in that way, we can also learn from it. Like if we don't try to pretend that we are, you know, in a different galaxy and we're like, you know, I'm not my ancestors, whatever. Like we don't pretend that that's the case, we can actually learn some lessons from stuff.
Yeah, and just that also makes me think of this, the concept of imagination and
Mhm.
how the future has to be imaginative, and kind of like what you were saying, we can't think that things are inevitable or that the
Mhm.
way things are now are natural. Like it's the natural way of the world, because it's not. In the chapter where she talks about cowrie shells and the transatlantic slave trade, like in the thick of it, if you're in year 200 of 400 years of this thing, yeah,
Mhm.
it feels inevitable. It feels like the natural order of the, natural world order. But you and I are sitting here on the computer now, and we are not inside those 400 years.
Yeah.
Amen. And it's just like, wow, a lot of people's imaginations
Mhm.
fuel us out of that. And
Yeah.
so we might be in the middle of a 400 years of something, but
Mhm.
it's going to take imagination to fuel us out of that. Just because it is the way things are now doesn't mean that's what they have to be.
Yeah. Yeah. I think like that's probably the biggest, like, what this book made me believe about the future for me is just like I need to get a better imagination for what beauty in my life could be, because like I really relate to that, like, oh, I like hunger to have beauty in my life. Like it is the other side of the coin of like being never outgrowing my emo phases, but like but I need to have something to look out for and live for. And like, does that have to be the way that a bottle of perfume looks like sitting on top of my dresser? Could it be art that I make? Could it be friendships that I have? Could it be nature? Like, that I need to have a bigger imagination for what counts as beauty that doesn't just include, something I can add to cart.
Yeah. And the book also made me think of, I guess, colonization.
It always comes back.
Just because you see something beautiful doesn't mean it's yours, and doesn't mean you have to like yoink it. And I
Mhm.
feel like we think that's a natural thing, but that's a cultural thing. Something that, and people over there, the Christopher Columbuses of the world, did. And so now we live in their imagination. But there are whole groups of people who do not believe that, and who weren't born thinking that, and aren't surrounded by that school of thought. They see something beautiful and like that's it. Like you don't want to harvest it and like make more and make more, So yeah, colonization. Colonization.
Like, I feel like you brought it to like a very big picture, like beautiful note. Because I remember when I was like in college, reading in like an Oprah magazine article, like this, like about minimalism. Because you remember like 2010s, like minimalism was the thing
Yeah.
about like, oh, you don't need to possess something to appreciate it. And I remember reading that and then like going and walking around in an Urban Outfitters being like, I don't need to possess this to appreciate it. Yeah.
So first of all, why were you in the Urban Outfitters? Gotcha.
It's funny. I'm sitting here like I don't need to with bows in my hair because I saw them on the fashion girls on TikTok. Like,
Mm-hmm.
but that I should be able to look for beauty in other places, and to your point, like look for other ways of interacting with beauty other than like mine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
I like what Sarah said here in the chat. I'm going to put it up on screen. We were talking earlier about just like, this inevitability of like AI and stuff. And Sarah's like, I was feeling this way about probiotic soda earlier today. a product that was suddenly marketing and nobody asked for it. And I feel like I've talked about this before on my channel. Were we doing this number of steps of like scalp serums and scrubs and oils? Was there a body retinol when we were like?
There was not a body retinol. Do I need the Naturium body wash at Target?
Is there like, were we doing, you know, like a multi-step like armpit mask? Like there's just so many things that I feel like sometimes I'm like, am I going crazy? Are they just making up? Everybody just looked around and they're like, all right, we're all lip oils. We're all doing lip oils. Like, and probably yes, like probably they do just do that. But part of me, part of my kind of ongoing journey with consumption is just like when they tell me there's a new thing and like, yeah, we're all doing probiotic sodas now. I mean, this is not probiotic, but I have my little beautifully designed sparkling pomelo water here. Like, do I need to buy in? Do I need to get on that train just because it's pulling into the station? Like, I don't know if you have any sort of relationship with that kind of scenario that you've been seeing out in the world.
Specifically about the probiotic soda, because you and I were talking earlier, I work in a house for a family, and it's an Indian family, and it's a scratch kitchen. Like the mom makes mostly everything from scratch. And so, you know, I help her prep and, you know, I'm doing all these things and she'll tell me like what she's making. And so she was telling me, I forgot what it was called, but it's like fermented rice powder, but it's like she like mixes it and leaves it in the oven to like ferment, and it's good probiotics. That's what they eat for breakfast. And I was like, So when it comes to the probiotic sodas, whenever I see trends, especially when it comes to food, I have to ask myself, what culture does this regular? Like, what culture does this regular? And how can I incorporate their stuff into my life without having to buy the new graphic designed thing?
Right.
So instead of like buying a probiotic soda, which I still do drinking sodas, it's being like, okay, well, kombucha's been here, right? Like you can drink kombucha, you can eat more fermented foods, you know, yogurt has always been around. Like it doesn't always have to be a super cute strawberry probiotic soda.
Like whenever I see like an AG1 ad and I'm just like, you just need to eat your vegetables, girl. Like, yeah. I think that also kind of wraps right back around to the like colonization conversation again too, because like there's like, I don't know if this is a thing where you live. There's just been this rise. There was like a article about it in like Eater or something about this thing called the Shoppy Shop.
Yeah.
You go in and it's the Graza olive oil and it's the Fly by Jing chili crisp. And it's like all these like very like beautifully packaged, like special, like little foods or like vitamins or beverages or whatever. And they all cost $25. And these are just things that people like, we've like reached an overshot peak. Like we took a thing and we put it in millennial branding and now we're selling it to you for a markup. Like I'm getting ads on my Instagram. I re-downloaded Instagram because I was just like, what's out there these days for like aesthetic air conditioning, window air conditioners. And like window air conditioning. I mean, that's a whole separate thing. That was a chapter in the last book we read about like the impacts of that. But like how many of those things are just like, this is again, like quinoa, part of somebody's cultural practice for generations, and somebody put a cute label on it and now it's $30. And like, and I'm buying it. Like, but like to stop and think, like, is this new, or is this just new to me? And so, like, do I need to be consuming it? Is it for me? Can I consume it in a way that actually benefits the people who this is? You know?
Yeah, and it made me think of advertising and like the marketing of it all, because I remember when I first went natural. So I'm like growing out the chemicals out of my hair to have its natural hair texture, and I'm using all these products, and I'm starting to use coconut oil, and I'm go to my parents' house, and my mom is just kind of giggling at me while I do my hair, and or talk to her about coconut oil, and she was just giggling, and I was like, "What's so funny?" And she was like, "When I was growing up, coconut oil was for poor people, and everyone wanted to use Vaseline." And I was like, huh? It was this idea that like what, and now we're cycling back to wanting to use the natural thing and like not so much use the man-made thing. So, oh, you froze. You're frozen. Frozen. Oh no, where did Taylor go? Okay.
I dropped out and I was like, oh no, is this me? Is this you? And then I came back and you were vamping and I was like, it's me.
So yeah, so like my mom was telling me how growing up, coconut oil, which was the natural accessible thing, was the like frowned upon thing, and everyone wanted to use Vaseline. And now it's like, ew, who would want to use petroleum jelly and not the richness of coconut oil? So it's all marketing.
Yeah, it's you talk about like going natural and stuff, and I'm like, I think about when I first started wearing my hair curly and I stopped flat ironing it every day of my life from like age like 14 to 19. And then I was like, all right, let me see what my natural hair texture is about. Granted, I'm working with like a 2B. And I was, like on the naturally curly forums, I was buying, leave-ins and gels and all of these things that like my hair cannot. Turns out I can just use the products that everybody was using the whole time.
Yep.
My hair does fine. I just don't take a flat iron at the end. And it'll be okay. And like there's just so much of that whole like marketing hype too that I was like, all right, I got to get my like 8-step situation in my deep conditioner. Meanwhile, my hair can't handle that. Like, and there's just so much, so it's so easy to be like, oh, well, my problem is just caused by not having enough. Whereas for me, it was just that I needed to do less.
Yeah, I've been trying to save money and like see what part of my skincare is actually necessary. So I was like, okay, I ran out of my moisturizer. Do I actually need moisturizer if I'm going to be putting on sunscreen on top anyways? So I just like went to the Indian grocery store, got a $2 bottle of rose water, and like that's my moisturizer. And I'm like, turns out I don't need to pay somebody $25 every month and a half for a moisturizer.
Meanwhile, that's my thing that I'm like, skincare is my thing, like my hidden shame, where I'm like, this is my emotional support skincare routine, where I have 7 steps and I love it. And I know I have a prescription acne medication. I've been on it since I was 17. That is doing 99% of the work. I went to a doctor, they gave me a cream. Meanwhile, I'm doing all these other things because I'm like, oh, it smells nice and it feels nice. And I know that it is not what I need or like what's actually working. But that's the one where I'm like, don't take that from me. Don't. And so like that's part of what I'm trying to like poke at in myself is just like, okay, but why am I like, but I want my little bottles of my little gels and my little creams. Like, maybe that is, it's very potions. It was very like me mixing up like a bowl full of like glitter and water in my backyard when I'm in 3rd grade, like making a magic spell. Like maybe it all comes back to that. Do you have yeah, Matt saying what is the ratio for something actually working to one enjoying it? And like that's a little bit of it too, where I'm like, I enjoy it, but like how far can I enjoy it justify doing something that I know is probably wrong? And I'm curious if you have any of those things in your life where you're like, I'm hanging on to my one thing.
What is that for me? For me, I think it's 2 things, but then they're kind of like 2 different conversations. So one is just like knickknacks, just like knickknacks, because I'm like, oh, I wasn't allowed to paint my walls when I was younger. So I was like, I need to express myself through knickknacks. And this is a lighter, you know, you know what I mean? I'm like, what the fuck is this? Like, I don't. These are my fidget toys, huh? So it's like,
I'm reaching over here. I got my little desk dinosaur and my bubbles.
Yeah. Like,
yeah.
I need that.
That's fun.
Yeah. So for me, it's knickknacks, and then also clothing. Not because like I love shopping, but because like if I can manage to find something that fits, I'm going to buy it. And so now I'm trying to remedy that. I'm like, okay, can I start shopping for patterns so that I can learn about clothes? And either that informs my purchasing decisions because I learn what things are called. Like, what is this neckline called? What is it called when it cuts you off up here versus down here? So either it helps my shopping decisions, or I can just learn to make clothes myself, which I'll let you know if I ever do that.
The whole thing. I'm like, part of me wants to do it, and then I'm like, that's just going to become another thing that I am going to buy too many items and tools for. Yes. Yeah, that's really interesting because like I do think that there's a flip side to the like sort of overconsumption conversation where like, you know, like I think a lot of the advice is like, you know, stop watching influencers, blah, blah, blah. And like to a point, yes, I agree. But for me, like I went through a thing over the past couple of years where I'm like, okay, my body's changed. I need clothes that fit, but I want to buy clothes that I feel good in, that feel like express who I am, whatever. And I started watching a lot of like fashion, like TikTokers. And it started to give me a better vocabulary. And then I also started like tracking my clothes in an app and stuff and like, you know, taking pictures of my outfits and trying to like see what I watched like, all right, I felt good in this. I didn't feel good in this. Why? And it's actually made it like it's kind of slowed me down in the pace of just like, well, I'm just gonna buy it because like I got dressed today and I felt bad and so I need to fix that. But like actually spending the time and like learning a lot of information about like, okay, this is why I like this or why I don't like this actually makes it possible for me to buy less because I'm not just like panic shopping to like make a bad feeling go away.
Yeah. And
like,
it goes back to what I was saying about like some people's decisions matter more. And it's like, if we do a breakdown of fast fashion, are the 2XLs contributing the most or like the mediums? We don't know. I don't want to have the conversation. People don't have the conversation. So like even I go thrifting and there isn't much in my size because like once we find something to wear, we're not giving it away. So the thrift store is full of mediums.
Yeah, it's interesting that like we were talking about this in like an earlier episode about fast fashion, but it's something like the average Shein shopper is like 35 years old and is spending like $500 a year, 500 some bananas amount of money on
Wow.
Shein, where like I think people are quick to defend fast fashion because they're like, well, what if you're poor and you can't afford? I'm like, that's not who we're talking about. Like, we do need to distinguish. Like, I think that a big part of it is that like the people who are doing the most damage are not doing this out of necessity. They're doing it without even thinking about it. And that kind of really gets to this comment I'm going to put up on screen, which is just like the chief cost of buying more conscientiously to be time or spending more ultimately. Like for me, I think a lot of why I can even sit here and care this much is because I do have time. And I can spend, a cheeky afternoon like researching what's the best whatever, or like hunting down a vintage like skirt for 2 months. So, I think I do spend like a lot of people think that like, shopping sustainably or whatever costs you more money. Yeah, there's like fancy brands that sell you a very expensive compost bin or whatever, but like you don't have to buy that. You can get something for free on Facebook Marketplace, or you can, thrift it, or you can borrow it from somebody and it will cost you less. And also, if you are buying less, you are spending less, hopefully overall. Yeah, so with Tanvi in the comments saying the cost of seeing a dermatologist for me is much lower than the money I spend $200 a year. I understand, like it's hard to justify that, but like one time a year I am spending that money and I get the only product besides, sunscreen that I really actually need.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is a luxury of time that I have, I think, to be like able to try to make better decisions in the first place.
Yeah, and it's also like when it comes to, so yeah, I agree. The chief cost of buying more conscientiously is time, especially when you take into account what Tanvi said, trial and error. So like it's a very hard lesson to learn and it takes me a long time. But I cannot buy the dupe. I have to buy what I originally saw. And so if I saw this dress and it was, $100 and I want to buy like the Old Navy version, I'm going to be disappointed with the Old Navy version. And so instead of buying multiple Old Navy versions, I have to spend the time and like the emotional regulation to like put away my desires and just get the thing I originally wanted.
Yeah.
So
it's the classic buy nice or buy twice is
yes, that's a good one.
and it's like something that I've asked myself too, like especially like sometimes I'll be trying to buy something and I'm like, well, for this cost, for this $100 dress, I could get 3 dresses or 5 dresses or whatever somewhere else. But like, do I need 5 dresses? Probably not. There's something that I do because I use like now that I use like an app to like catalog my wardrobe is like when I want to buy something, the trial and error is that I like take the picture of the thing that I want and I put it into the app, and I have to make a bunch of outfits before I can buy it. I have to know how I'm gonna wear it. And if I can't do it in the app, how do I think I'm gonna do it in real life? So like it stopped a lot of like sort of those trial and error purchases for me because, you get caught up in the way that something is photographed or whatever or presented on a product page, and you don't actually think about how it's going to work in your real life. And like it allows me to kind of make some of those trial and errors before actually like spending money on something.
Yeah.
But it is it's definitely still like a trade-off. There's you can try to predict and plan, and then like you're still going to make mistakes. And I think part of it is just like trying to make myself be responsible for those mistakes is actually like helpful, is not to just go like, I, you know, I bought a bunch of things that didn't work. Oopsie, like, let me just throw them in the donation bin and like absolve myself from this. Is like, if I want to get rid of my clothes, it's actually my responsibility to get it in the hands of somebody else who wants to wear it. So like, it's gonna take me longer to like take nice pictures and like put it up on Poshmark and sell it to like an individual who wants to wear it. But then I know it gets to an individual who wants to wear it. Whereas if I just like, take it to a Buffalo Exchange or just drop it in a Goodwill bin, like it's probably going to end up in the trash on a beach in Ghana. Like,
yeah, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, I went to ThriftCon. Have you ever heard of that?
No.
So it's not thrifting, it's secondhand and vintage shopping, but for the sake of a catchy name, they call it ThriftCon. And so they travel, it's like a touring market. And I went to the ThriftCon in Houston this summer. And, I'm not trying to buy, $200 Michael Jordan t-shirts from 93. Like, I'm not trying to do that. So I was looking for all the bins. Like, where can I like dig through? And there's this like $5 bin of just white t-shirts, like white graphic tees. Honestly, like taller than some people. Like the pile big. And we're literally just like little gremlins. And I'm like, this is from one vendor. This is one vendor dumping all these t-shirts in Houston. So not even in the United States. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't donate. I have to like you were saying, I have to get this in the hands of someone that will actually wear it so it doesn't land in another bin.
Right. Right. Like that's the thing that like is probably the biggest moderating force on me buying stuff, is just like either with like skincare, makeup, like, am I going to use this to the last drop? Am I going to use this all the way up? Because there's no one you can just give used makeup to. It's just not a thing. Like every beauty blogger who's like, yeah, I gave this all to my sister. I'm like, and is your sister using it all?
Right.
No one is using all that PR. But like, am I going to use this all the way up, or am I going to be able to either wear this out to the end of its lifespan, like it is now cleaning rags, or do I know that I can get this in the hands of somebody else who would wear it? Like, there was a while where I was wearing those like cute little like Reformation dresses to like weddings every summer. And I don't buy them anymore because like, even though they call themselves a sustainable brand, they're fast fashion. Like, and the quality is fast fashion and the price is not fast fashion, which makes it even more egregious. But I know that I can sell a Reformation dress in 24 hours on Poshmark. I know someone will buy that dress. And so like part of my decisions was like, like nobody in the world wants the t-shirt from your family reunion. Nobody wants your t-shirt from somebody else's bachelorette party. Nobody wants it. So like, don't make it. And so like, I'm trying to just make decisions of like, what is the end of life? Because if I bring this into my life, I am responsible.
Yeah. Oh, that also, you saying you're responsible made me think of like my overarching thought when it comes to this book is the idea of like lust versus stewardship. And how like our lust for things and just wanting to like is in direct opposition a lot of the times with stewardship, like the feeling that we are responsible over that thing once we have it, or stewardship in the sense of like taking care of our stuff or our surroundings, going back to climate change, and just like it's our lust for things that hurts the planet. And like, how can we be like celibate? How can we be celibate consumers and like have a vow of celibacy?
Yeah, I like And thank you for bringing it up back to the book, because this happens to me all the time on these book clubs where I'm like, now we're just having a little chat. But we did read a book. Yeah, and I think that like that's a really good framing. I really like that idea of like, because as I said, like part of what this made me believe about the future is like I need to find a different relationship to beauty than just like take. And I think stewardship is a really beautiful framing of it. Is like, even if you think about some of the items that she's talking about in this book, like an heirloom piece of jewelry from your family that you're passing down and you're taking care of and you're maintaining and you're cleaning and you're repairing, or a silk dress that you find at the thrift store and then you make sure how to like that you're like properly washing it, or like dry cleaning or whatever, and like mending it and really giving it the proper care. That's like another thing is like, if I see something that's dry clean only, like I know I'm not going to do that. So what business do I have buying it? Like if I'm not going to take care of it properly. But like even if like silk moths, like somebody who's harvesting silk, like are they being a good steward of the moth population? Like that there is a way to take care of things so that they can last for a long time and that beauty can be enjoyed by more people over more time. That you're just sort of like, I'm borrowing this, I'm not possessing it. And so it's my job to take care of it while it's with me.
Yeah.
That's a great framing.
What are the people saying? Sustainable, yes.
How do you deal with the emotions of decluttering? When I have things that are broken and cannot be repaired, I feel immense guilt, and that makes it hard for me to get rid of. This is actually something that I talk about a lot with my girlfriend, who is like very eco-conscious and like will not get rid of a broken charger for the life of her. And I think it's because she's like, I don't want to put this in the trash. And I'm like, but like, is keeping it in your house make not trash? Like, that's like, it's like, what a good reminder that the most sustainable option is just to not buy something in the first place. Do you have any thoughts about decluttering? I know you've been kind of on a declutter journey yourself.
Yeah. Let me think. Yeah, when it comes to the emotions of decluttering, yeah, I feel guilt for sometimes not becoming who that object represents. Especially when it's clothes or I don't know, other items that are like, this was supposed to be for dream Evelyn. And I'm her. And I'm kind of never going to be. So I do have those emotions. But when it comes to things that are broken, I really don't have that problem. I kind of just like, what's broken? But what I've had success doing is ranking the brokenness of something. So if something is completely smashed, like it's just destroyed, okay, I can get rid of it. But this need to have everything be pristine, okay, I don't have that. Like chipped dishes, chipped mugs, like that doesn't bother me anymore. If like a chair is broken or like the desk is wobbly, like can I fix it? For me, it's about reframing broken versus like something that's repairable. But when it comes to cannot be repaired, I'm sorry, friend. I don't have that immense guilt. I just just get rid of it.
I think it's like, one, you have to have develop your sense of like what can be repaired. Like I learned how to darn socks over the summer. It's actually like, I find a really soothing activity. I like to do it when I watch movies because you're just doing this really repetitive movement. And you just have to get over the fact that you're going to have socks that look funny. Like they're inside your shoes.
Yeah.
Nobody sees that. That and like, I feel like there's certain like, if you look up visible mending, there's a lot of ways that you can make repairs look cool and interesting, and it can add character to the thing that you're repairing. But I think maybe a concept that might help you, Tanvi, there's that I learned recently is called wish cycling. And it's this thing that like, you know, like when you read articles about like how plastic recycling in the US like doesn't really exist and like we're just putting things in the recycle bin and like being like, well, that doesn't matter, you know, I can put in a dozen water bottles a week and like it's whatever, it's getting recycled. That's not really happening. And there's so much that we do like don't, you know, bringing it to Goodwill and somebody will use that and they won't because it's broken and it's whatever, or throwing it in a recycle bin, or like there's just so many things that we think that we tell ourselves someone else will use this to make ourselves feel better, and it's actually like a way to reduce the cognitive dissonance and the guilt is to be honest about what is really happening, which is this is a thing that has served its useful life. It can no longer be used, not by me, not by anybody. I'm not putting up this, you know, broken thing and saying somebody else will fix it. Well, if you don't have the energy to fix it, is somebody else realistically going to do that? So like I like so much of my life right now is just like, let me reduce the cognitive dissonance. Let me be real with myself about what I'm doing here. And that's actually going to make me feel better in the long run because then I can make decisions accordingly rather than sticking my head in the sand. Where like, all right, I know that nobody else can use this. And so I know, you know, nobody wants like a 5-generation-old iPhone, so I'm going to use it until it doesn't work anymore rather than replacing it. Or like nobody wants my bachelorette party t-shirt, so next time I'm at a bachelorette party, I'm going to say, let's do stickers. Let's, you know, make cute little banners out of, you know, craft paper. Like that it can actually guide you to better decisions. And it's a process because as I said, I know cognitive dissonance removed, my prescription acne medication is really what's doing it for my skincare, but I'm still, you know, I have my little routine. But, you know, I think you also have to be patient with yourself and that it's a process and that we're all sort of deconstructing all these forces telling us probiotic soda is like the new thing. Everybody's always been doing it. And so if we don't make perfect decisions in every single case, you know, from day one, we can't let that stop us from trying to make better decisions where we can.
Yeah. Agreed.
Well, we are coming up to the end of our stream. I really appreciate you talking about desire and consumption. I'm gonna think about that as lust versus stewardship. I really, really like that framing. Thank you for bringing that to us. Is there anything else that you kind of were thinking about that we didn't get to cover before we go, or?
Yeah, let me see. Kind of circling back to what you were probably saying in the beginning of what are some non-material ways to experience beauty, or even what are some non-material ways to have personal, I don't know if the word is style. So I've been thinking about that a lot of like, it doesn't have to be that you buy probiotic sodas. It doesn't have to be that you have, you know, you go on Etsy and you buy the thing and you buy the thing and you buy the thing. It's also the non-material stuff of like, what is so Evelyn that you can't buy, right? Like I am someone who will embarrass themselves and like sing randomly in a grocery store. I am someone who does look at the moon phases to see what the moon is doing every day. Like that's just what I do. I don't know. I like to make little drinky drink concoctions and like, hey, do you like this? Do you like this? Do you like this? So those are all like kind of non-material, non-fashion things that have to do with the beauty in my everyday life. So I would just encourage people to think about what are some non-consumerism things that make your life beautiful and make you, so that you don't have to like fall prey to the marketing that says buy this thing or buy this other thing.
Yeah, I love that. It's like there's been some like discourse online recently about how like all of the like youth subcultures used to be tied to like when I was in high school, I was like very much an emo kid and I had the bangs this way and I had, you know,
Mhm.
the black hoodie with the hood up and stuff. But it was about listening to a certain kind of music and like, you know, punk music had values and like
And
you know,
politics, yeah.
there's been like, you know, movements of subculture that had aesthetics but were largely about the other stuff that was not a product, and now
Yeah.
we just have the product. You know, Tomato Girl is just a product. There are no politics to Tomato Girl. So like I really like that, like that it could be politics, that it could be like who are the people I'm organizing with, and it could just be like what do my friends think about when they think about me? How do they
Yeah.
remember, like how do people what's so Evelyn? I really like that. And like as you were saying that, I was trying to think of like what's so Taylor, and I was like, I'm struggling with that. And maybe that's actually you know, something to pay attention to is if I'm like, if I don't know, like let's start there. Like
Yeah. You can ask other people because a lot of the times other people are like, "Oh yeah, I got a whole list in my head," and you're like, "Oh."
yeah. Well, I feel like that was a really useful kind of note to end on. Thank you so much for coming and hanging out with the Radish Collective and doing book
Thanks for
club.
having
And
me.
yeah, we'll see you all soon. Bye, everybody.